The doctor and the boyfriend. Here we go again. The Caretaker. This is probably the episode of the new series that I'm the most ambivalent about. It's not bad. I don't want to give that impression, but I've got the most mixed feelings about it of anything so far. Largely just because what it's dealing with is an aspect of current version of Doctor Who that I really don't care for and never have. I call it the domestics, because that's what the Doctor himself is called, and I'm talking about the things that tie a companion back to the real world. So parents, siblings, friends, boyfriends, whatever. It's something that the show never dealt with in the classic era. And in that regard, it's one of the things that I prefer the classic era's approach, because when the new show first started dealing with that, it was kind of interesting because, as I said, classic era never did it, but for me, it got old really quick, and they just keep doing it again and again and again. Rose's family, Martha's family, Donna's family. Amy drags along Rory. Clara got double dipped for her own family and the family that she was watching the kids for. It's just never an aspect I found particularly interesting, and here we go again as Clara gets in deeper with her relationship with Danny, and obviously that conflicts with her life on the TARDIS with the Doctor. That said, it wasn't terrible. I wasn't in pain. It's one of those things where I'm kind of like, okay, if we have to do this, this is about as well as it's going to get done. Largely because I still like the character of Danny Pink himself, and that does take the curse off it a bit. I like him as a character unto himself. I like his interactions with Clara. I actually ended up really liking his interactions with the Doctor, which I wasn't sure I was going to like because they've gone very heavy-handed with sort of setting up what the two of them meeting is going to be like. And by that I'm referring to all the stuff that's gone on in episodes up to this point, referring repeatedly to the fact that the Doctor doesn't like soldiers. Now, here's the thing. If you've been watching the show really ever, you should kind of know that already. And even if you don't, just one or two reminders is enough. But this current series has really just been hammering that point over and over again. It's like, okay, fine, we get it. And it was so obvious why they were doing it, to set up for when he inevitably runs into Danny that there was going to be that tension and that conflict. But the thing is, those two characters butt heads naturally enough that it didn't need this big setup. And that's sort of the other thing that takes the curse off it. As ham-fisted as the setup for the conflict was, you get the two of them in a room together, and I like the way they interact. I like the way they bounce off each other. I like the way they challenge each other. Another thing that I'm surprised that I liked is the fact that the sort of sci-fi, more classic Doctor Who aspect of the story is really kind of sidelined. It's background for the most part. And normally that would annoy me, but they've scaled the story such that it works very well. It's such a simple, straightforward story that there would have been no point in spending the entire episode on it. It's too simple. But as the through line, as something to keep the Doctor doing and keep him busy, it works very well. Peter Capaldi is still doing great work. He also has some interesting things with one of the students at the school that he's pretending to be the caretaker at. And I liked it enough that I'm actually kind of torn as to whether I want to see them do anything more with that or not. I liked what went on, and I'd be interested in seeing it again, but then again, as a one-off, it felt like a completed moment. It didn't feel like something worth revisiting. And oddly, I actually liked Clara quite a bit. I feel like we got a better definition on her in this episode than we've had really since ever. I think partially because the question actually got asked point blank, why does she travel with the Doctor? And the thing is, I've never really understood that myself, and I think that might be part of why I've never gotten on board with her. All the other companions, I've understood why they were there, why they chose to go in the first place, and why they chose to stay for as long as they did. Clara, I don't know. She just kind of turned up and then stuck around. She doesn't seem impressed with anything that's going on. She doesn't seem particularly emotionally invested in what's going on. She's just there. So it was kind of nice to have that question asked point blank, and it just sort of reassured me, oh, I'm not the only one who's wondering. Thank you. So like I said, pretty good episode as far as these sort of more Earth-based dealing with the domestic side episodes go. It was one of the better ones, certainly. I am nervous as to where they're gonna go with Danny after this episode. Whether or not I'm completely on board with him really hinges on what they choose to do with him, because I like him as a character, but there are certain things that they may choose to do with him that I would rather they didn't. So I'm gonna have to wait for the next few episodes to see what direction they actually go with. But I think that's about it for me on this one. Now, let me ask you this. Who was your favorite character who was rooted in the domestic side of things? And I'm talking about characters like Jackie, Mickey, Clara's Gran. For me personally, and if you've seen my companion rankings, you know this, for me it's Wilfred Mott. He was the pinnacle of how good this stuff can be, but he's the minority. Most of them bug me. But who was your favorite character on that whole domestic front? Whoever it was, drop something down in the comments and let's talk about it. Until next time, this council is adjourned.